The alarm cut through the darkness at 5:30, and Cole Merrick's hand found the button before his eyes opened. Muscle memory from 16 years of pre-dawn briefings of operations that started when most people still
What is wrong with you?
He
It was
lay
an
still for 3
accident.
seconds,
Hey, calm
listening to
down.
the
What's
house
going
settle
on?
around
Stay
him,
out of this.
then
Please
swung
stop.
his legs out of bed and stood. The floor was cold under his bare feet. Spring in New Hampshire came late and left early, and the morning still carried winter's bite. He moved through the routine without thinking. Shower-shaved jeans and a gray Henley that had seen better days. The watch went on last, scratched and dented, the kind of timepiece that couldn't be bought in any store. Military issue. The crystal was spiderwebbed in the upper left corner from an impact he no longer remembered, but the second hand still swept smooth and true. He checked the time against his phone. 6:03. The watch was 11 seconds fast, same as always. Down the hall, Maya's door stood half open. She slept with one arm thrown over her head, tangled in sheets decorated with stars and moons she'd picked out 3 years ago and refused to replace. 12 years old, going on 20, she'd told him last week she was too old for celestial patterns, but when he'd offered to buy new ones, she'd backtracked. Cole stood in the doorway and watched her breathe steady and deep, the rise and fall of her chest that never stopped being a miracle. 6 years since Sarah died. 6 years of doing this alone, and he still woke some nights in a panic, convinced he'd failed at the only mission that truly mattered. The kitchen was small and dated all original 1920s cabinetry that he'd refinished himself, stripping decades of paint down to bare oak. He made coffee in the French press Sarah had insisted on buying back when they'd first moved in, and everything felt possible. The water boiled, the grounds bloomed, and 4 minutes later he was wrapping both hands around a mug of something strong enough to strip paint. He drank it black, standing at the window that looked out over the backyard. The swing set still stood where he'd built it when Maya was 4, rusted now, and unused, a monument to a childhood that was slipping away faster than he could track. His phone buzzed against the counter. A text from Nash. "Quiet night, nothing to report." Cole typed back with one thumb. "Appreciate the update." Lieutenant Michael Nash had been running periodic patrols past the house for the last month, ever since Ethan Drake had walked into the police station and asked, casual as ordering coffee, whether Merrick still lived in town. Nash had been a Marine corporal once before the police academy, and he understood the kind of grudge that outlasted discharge papers and therapy sessions. He'd pulled Cole aside after morning coffee one day and laid it out plain. Drake was asking questions, and questions like that rarely stayed theoretical. Cole set the phone down and finished his coffee. The house creaked around him, old wood settling pipes expanding as the furnace kicked on. He'd bought this place with Sarah when they'd still believed deployment schedules were temporary inconveniences, when the plan had been for him to finish his 20 and retire into something normal. Carpentry, maybe. Teaching high school shop class. Something that didn't require him to be gone 8 months out of 12, missing birthdays and holidays, and the 1,000 small moments that stitched a marriage together. Cancer had rewritten that plan. Fast and brutal, the doctors had said, which was their way of admitting they couldn't do a damn thing about it. Stage 4 by the time symptoms showed, metastasized beyond surgery, beyond treatment, beyond anything except morphine and waiting. He'd been deployed in Iraq when the diagnosis came through. Made it home in 48 hours and spent the next 11 weeks watching her fade, holding her hand, lying to her about how good she looked when they both knew the truth. 3 weeks after the funeral, he'd walked into his commanding officer's office and submitted his resignation. No one had tried to talk him out of it. They understood what Maya needed, what he needed, what staying in would cost them both. 16 years of service, multiple commendations, the kind of record that made early retirement look reasonable instead of desperate. He'd cleaned out his locker, turned in his gear, and driven home to figure out how to be a single father with no training manual and no backup. 6 years later, he still didn't have all the answers, but Maya was alive and healthy and sleeping down the hall, and that counted for something. At 7:15, he climbed the stairs and knocked on her door. No response. He knocked again, louder, and heard a groan from inside. Her voice came muffled through the pillow. 5 more minutes. He pushed the door open. She hadn't moved, still sprawled across the bed like gravity had failed. 5 minutes turns into 10, and 10 turns into late. Up. Another groan, but she rolled over and squinted at him through sleep-sticky eyes. Her hair was a disaster dark brown and tangled the same shade Sarah's had been. She had her mother's cheekbones too, the delicate architecture that would break hearts in a few years, though Cole tried not to think about that particular future. "It's Saturday," she mumbled, "and you have soccer at 9. Up. I hate soccer. You begged me to sign you up. That was last year. I've evolved." He crossed his arms and leaned against the doorframe. "Evolution doesn't exempt you from commitment. You signed up for spring season, you play spring season. Up." She sat up, sheets falling away, wearing an oversized t-shirt she'd stolen from his drawer. "Can I at least have pancakes after you shower and brush your teeth? That's bribery. That's parenting." She threw a pillow at him. He caught it one-handed and tossed it back, and she was grinning now, the last traces of sleep falling away. This was their routine, the rhythm they'd built together over 6 years of figuring each other out. Negotiation disguised as argument, boundaries wrapped in banter. She climbed out of bed and shuffled toward the bathroom. He went back downstairs to start the pancakes. By 8:30 they were in his truck, an old Ford Ranger with 200,000 miles and a transmission that slipped in third gear. Maya sat in the passenger seat, soccer bag at her feet, earbuds in but volume low enough that he could tell she wasn't really listening. The town rolled past the windows, small and quiet. The kind of place people moved to when they wanted to disappear from whatever they'd left behind. Cole had chosen it for exactly that reason. No one here knew about the missions, the deployments, the classified operations that still woke him at 3 a.m. with his heart hammering and sweat soaking the sheets. He dropped her at the soccer complex and watched her jog toward the field where her team was already warming up. She moved with easy confidence, long legs eating up the ground, ponytail swinging. A few of the other girls called her name and she waved, and then she was absorbed into the group, indistinguishable from any other 12-year-old whose biggest concern was whether she'd start or sit the bench. Cole pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward Riverside Cafe, the same route he drove every Saturday morning. Coffee, an hour of peace, then back to pick her up at 10:30. It was a small ritual, predictable and safe, the kind of normalcy he'd craved his entire adult life without realizing it. The cafe sat on a corner lot, red brick and tall windows, the kind of building that had been something else once before. Someone gutted it and filled it with reclaimed wood and Edison bulbs. It opened at 7 on weekends, catering to early risers and insomniacs, and by 8:45 it was already half full. Cole pushed through the door and the smell hit him immediately. Dark roast and fresh pastries, cinnamon and butter and yeast. His stomach reminded him that 2 pancakes hadn't been nearly enough. He scanned the room, automatically cataloging exits and sight lines before his conscious mind caught up. The corner booth was open, same as always. He headed for it, weaving between tables where people hunched over laptops or bent close in conversation. No one looked up. He was good at being invisible when he wanted to be, a skill that had kept him alive in places where visibility meant death. The booth put his back to the wall and gave him a clean view of the entrance and the entire dining area. He slid in and set his phone on the table face down. The watch on his left wrist caught the morning light slanting through the windows, the scratched crystal throwing tiny rainbows across the worn laminate. Amy appeared with a pot of coffee and a smile that was genuine despite the early hour. Early 20s art school dropout, she'd told him once, working here while she figured out what came next. She had the kind of optimism that hadn't been ground down yet, and Cole liked her for it. The usual? He nodded. She poured steam rising between them, and he wrapped his hands around the mug before it was even full. The heat seeped through ceramic into his palms, anchoring him to this moment, this place, this version of himself that was just a guy drinking coffee on a Saturday morning. Amy moved on to the next table, and Cole sat with his coffee, not reading, not scrolling through his phone, just present, aware of every movement in the room without appearing to notice any of it. The couple by the window arguing in whispers. The college kid in the corner with headphones on nodding to a beat no one else could hear. The old man 2 tables over, flannel shirt and weathered hands, working through the crossword with a pencil worn down to a nub. The door opened, and Claire Hartley rolled in, wheelchair, navigating the threshold with practiced ease. She came most Saturdays, always around 9, always alone. Cole knew her name only because he'd overheard Amy use it once, asking if she wanted her usual table by the outlet where she could plug in her laptop. She was 28 or 29, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, dressed in clothes that prioritized function over fashion. She had the kind of face that would have been striking if she'd bothered with makeup, but she didn't, and Cole respected that. No pretense, no performance. She wheeled to her usual spot and transferred from chair to booth with efficient movements that spoke to years of repetition. The wheelchair folded with a practiced flick of her wrist, tucked beside the table where it wouldn't block traffic. She pulled out her laptop and a notebook, spreading them across the surface with the focused intent of someone who had work to do and limited time to do it. Cole had never spoken to her beyond the occasional nod of acknowledgement. She'd never spoken to him. They existed in parallel, two regulars who valued their solitude, and that was enough. He was halfway through his second cup when the door opened again and the temperature in the room dropped. Ethan Drake walked in like he owned the place, broad shoulders and leather jacket, moving with the kind of swagger that announced itself 3 steps ahead. Late 30s, tall enough to make average-sized men feel small, with the kind of face that might have been handsome if it wasn't twisted around anger and entitlement. 2 men flanked him. One massive, shoulders like a linebacker, neck thick as Cole's thigh. The other smaller and wiry, ferret face, the kind of guy who talked too much and thought it made him smart. Cole recognized Ethan instantly. 9 years since their last face-to-face, but some people burned themselves into your memory, whether you wanted them there or not. The cafe went quiet, not all at once, but in a wave, as people noticed and decided, consciously or not, that making themselves small was the smart play. Ethan scanned the room, slow and deliberate, and his eyes snagged on Claire. Something shifted in his expression. Not recognition. Something uglier. He changed trajectory mid-stride and headed straight for her table. Cole's hand tightened around his mug, but he didn't move. Not yet. Not unless it became necessary. Ethan reached Claire's table and stopped. She was focused on her screen, fingers flying across the keyboard, completely unaware or deliberately ignoring him. Ethan smiled, and it was the kind of smile that had nothing to do with humor. "Excuse me." Claire didn't look up. Ethan leaned in, invading the space above her table. "I said excuse me." This time she looked up, and Cole saw the exact moment she recognized the situation for what it was. Her expression went carefully neutral, the mask people learned to wear when confrontation was inevitable and escape wasn't an option. "Can I help you?" Ethan gestured at the booth. "You're taking up a lot of space here. 4-person table, just you. Seems selfish." The cafe had gone completely silent now. Even the espresso machine seemed to be holding its breath. Claire's voice stayed level. "There are other tables available, but I like this one. Then I'm sure you'll enjoy it when I leave in an hour." Ethan's smile widened. He turned to his friends, playing to an audience. "You hear that, an hour? Like she owns the place." The big one laughed, a sound like rocks in a garbage disposal. The ferret-faced one grinned, showing too many teeth. Ethan turned back to Claire, and his hand shot out faster than Cole expected, slamming down on the table hard enough to make her coffee jump. Liquid sloshed over the rim, spreading across the table in a dark stain that crept toward her laptop. She jerked back, hands up, and her chair rolled a few inches before hitting the wall. "Whoops." Ethan's voice dripped false apology. "Clumsy me." Claire grabbed napkins, trying to save her laptop, but the coffee was already seeping into the keyboard. Her face had gone white, anger and fear warring for dominance, and she was losing the fight to stay calm. Cole set his mug down and stood. The movement drew every eye in the room. Ethan's gaze swung toward him, and recognition hit like a physical blow. Ethan's face went through surprise, then rage, then something close to joy, all in the span of 2 seconds. "Well, well." Ethan spread his arms wide, an invitation and a threat. "Cole fucking Merrick." Cole walked toward them. Not fast, not slow. Measured and controlled, the way you approach a tripwire. You know is there, but can't see. You need to walk away. His voice was low, each word deliberate, and it cut through the silence like a blade. Ethan blinked, thrown by the calm, by the absolute absence of fear or aggression. He'd expected anger, expected a reaction he could feed off, could use as fuel. Ethan recovered fast, forcing a laugh. "Or, what you going to make me?" Cole stopped 3 feet away, close enough to act far enough to give Ethan a choice. I'm asking you to leave her alone. Asking. Ethan tasted the word, rolling it around. That's polite. Very polite. Very different from the guy I remember. The guy who left my brother to die. The air went electric. Cole's expression didn't change, but something in his stillness shifted like a fault line settling before the quake. Vincent made a choice. He saved 8 men. He died screaming. He died a hero. Ethan's face twisted. Don't you dare. Don't you stand there and talk about my brother like you knew him. Like you cared. You left him. You aborted the mission and you left Vincent behind and you came home and he didn't. Cole absorbed it all, let it wash over him. He'd heard it before in his own head in the dark hours when sleep wouldn't come. The difference was that he'd made peace with the choice, or as close to peace as anyone ever got with decisions made under fire with incomplete information and lives hanging in the balance. This isn't about Vincent. This is about you looking for a fight. Maybe I am. Ethan stepped closer, chest to chest, now invading the space between them, until Cole could smell the whiskey on his breath. Day drinking at 9 in the morning. That explained some of the recklessness. You got a problem with that. Cole didn't move, didn't step back, didn't square up, just stood there with the kind of patience that came from knowing exactly how this would end if it went wrong. Walk away. Last time I'm saying it. Ethan's hand came up and shoved Cole's shoulder heel of the palm, driving hard into the joint, testing, provoking, begging for escalation. Cole absorbed the impact, his body rocking back slightly before settling. He didn't shove back, didn't grab Ethan's wrist, just stood and let the moment breathe. Behind the counter, Amy had her phone pressed to her ear, lips moving silently. Good. Let the police come. Let them sort this out. Cole could wait. He was excellent at waiting, but Ethan wasn't. The second shove came harder. Both hands against Cole's chest meant to drive him back into the wall. Cole moved with it, taking 2 controlled steps backward, using the momentum to create distance instead of resistance. His spine touched brick and he stopped, waiting. Come on. Ethan's voice cracked, spit flying. Do something. Hit me. I know you want to. Cole didn't want to. That was the thing Ethan couldn't understand, the fundamental miscalculation at the heart of this entire confrontation. Cole had nothing to prove, no ego investment in dominance or saving face. He'd already won more fights than Ethan would ever know about, survived things that would have broken most men. He was done proving himself to anyone. But Ethan was committed now, too far in to back down, not with his friends watching, not with phones probably recording, not with his pride wrapped around his throat like a noose. He threw the punch. Wide looping hook telegraphed from 3 feet out, the kind of punch someone threw when they'd never been trained, when they'd learned to fight from movies and bar brawls instead of men who understood violence as a language with grammar and syntax. Cole saw it coming from a mile away. Had time to think. Time to choose, time to calculate exactly how this would end. He could duck, let the punch sail overhead, let Ethan stumble forward off balance and walk away while he recovered. But that wouldn't end this. Ethan would come back, would escalate, would hurt someone eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not Cole, but someone. So Cole moved. Not dramatic, not flashy, just precise. He shifted his weight to his left foot and turned his shoulders, slipping inside Ethan's guard as the punch passed through the space where his head had been a heartbeat before. His left hand came up and caught Ethan's extended wrist fingers, wrapping around bone and tendon with exactly enough pressure. His right hand locked onto Ethan's elbow thumb, finding the nerve cluster on the inside of the joint. Basic control hold. The kind taught in every military combative's course. The kind that worked because they relied on leverage and anatomy instead of raw strength. Cole rotated Ethan's arm. Not hard, not fast, just firm and controlled, following the natural range of motion until resistance became compliance. Ethan's body followed because it had no choice. The shoulder joint only moved in certain directions. Fight it, and something tore. Follow it, and you stayed intact. 3 seconds. That's all it took. 3 seconds and Ethan was facing the wall, right arm pinned behind his back at an angle that made movement impossible without dislocation. His left hand was pressed flat against brick, supporting his weight, and Cole stood behind him, close, controlling the angle with micro-adjustments that looked effortless but were the product of thousands of hours of training. Ethan's struggled muscles tensing, trying to push back, trying to twist free. Cole increased pressure just enough to freeze him in place, not enough to damage, just enough to send a very clear message. Keep fighting and this gets worse. Stop moving. The warning in Cole's voice was calm, almost gentle. You're going to hurt yourself. The cafe had gone absolutely silent. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the espresso machine seemed to have stopped breathing. Amy stood behind the counter with her phone still pressed to her earmouth, slightly open. The college kid in the corner had lowered his phone, face pale. The old man in the flannel shirt sat with his crossword forgotten, one hand pressed against his heart. They'd expected a brawl. Expected shouting, wild swings, broken furniture. They hadn't expected efficiency. Control. A man who moved like violence was a language he'd spoken so long it required no thought, no effort, no emotion. Cole held Ethan against the wall and waited. Waited for the fight to drain out of him. Waited for reality to sink in. Waited for the moment when Ethan understood that he'd made a very serious mistake about the quiet man in the corner booth. It took longer than Cole expected. Ethan kept struggling, kept testing the hold, kept refusing to accept what was happening. But eventually, inevitably, the fight drained out of him all at once, like air escaping a punctured tire. His muscles went slack. His breathing turned ragged. Cole felt the shift, felt the moment when resistance became compliance. He held the position for 3 more seconds, long enough to be absolutely sure, then released the pressure and stepped back. Ethan turned around slowly, face flushed, eyes wide. He looked at Cole like he was seeing him for the first time, like the last 30 seconds had rewritten everything he thought he understood about the world. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Cole put distance between them, 2 steps, then 3. He moved to the side so he wasn't blocking Ethan against the wall, giving him space, giving him an exit. The positioning was deliberate, non-threatening. Cole's hands hung loose at his sides, weight centered. He wasn't pursuing, wasn't pressing, just holding the boundary he'd set. Sirens cut through the silence, faint at first, then louder, growing closer. Ethan's head snapped toward the sound. Panic flickered across his face. He looked at Cole, looked at the door, looked back at Cole. Cole shook his head once. Small movement. Clear message. Don't run. Ethan stayed where he was. 2 police cruisers pulled up outside, lights flashing. 4 officers came through the door, moving with the kind of careful speed that said they'd been told there was an active fight, that someone might be hurt, that the situation might still be escalating. The first officer through the door was young, late 20s, blonde hair pulled back tight. Her hand rested on her belt near her radio, not on her weapon, but close enough to matter. Her eyes swept the room, taking in the crowd, the phones, the 2 men near the back wall. The second officer was older, 50, maybe 55, gray at his temples, weathered face that had seen too many Saturday morning calls exactly like this one. His name tag read Nash. He moved slower than his partner, more deliberate, and his eyes found Cole first and stayed there. Something passed across his face. Recognition, maybe concern. He said something quietly to the younger officer. She nodded and moved toward Ethan. Nash walked toward Cole. His posture was relaxed but alert, the walk of someone who'd done this enough times to know that assumptions could get you hurt. He stopped a few feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to react if he needed to. You want to tell me what happened here? Cole met his eyes directly. Didn't look away. Didn't fidget. Didn't rush to explain or defend himself. Just stood there and let Nash assess him. He knocked over her table. Cole gestured toward Claire, still sitting in her booth laptop, dripping coffee onto her lap. Deliberately. Then he took a swing. Nash looked at the table, looked at the stain spreading across the laminate, looked back at Cole's face. His eyes dropped briefly to the watch on Cole's wrist. Standard military issue. The kind you couldn't buy in stores. The kind you earned. Nash's expression shifted slightly. Not much. Just enough. And what did you do? Restrained him. Didn't hit him. Didn't hurt him. Just held him until he stopped. Nash looked over his shoulder. The younger officer had Ethan against a different wall now, different position but the same defeated posture. She was talking to him in a low voice, taking his ID. Ethan was cooperating, all the fight gone out of him. Amy appeared at Nash's shoulder phone, still in hand. Her voice shook slightly. "That's true. That guy—" She pointed at Ethan. Came in and went straight for her. She pointed at Claire. Knocked her table on purpose, started pushing him. She pointed at Cole. Everyone saw it. The old man in the flannel shirt stood and walked over. His voice was rough from a lifetime of cigarettes or hard work or both. "She's right. The big guy started it. This one here just defended himself. Didn't do more than he had to." Nash looked at Cole again. Really looked this time. Took in the way he stood, the way he held himself, the way his eyes tracked movement without his head turning. The watch. The faded clothes. The quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. "You ex-military?" It wasn't really a question. It was confirmation. Cole nodded once. "What branch Navy? How long? 16 years. Nash waited. When Cole didn't offer more, he didn't push. He just nodded like he'd gotten exactly the answer he expected. He turned toward his partner and gave a small hand signal. She nodded back and started walking Ethan toward the door. Ethan's voice cracked on the question. "Am I being arrested?" The younger officer's voice was professionally neutral. "You're being removed for disturbing the peace. We'll talk outside." Ethan looked back at Cole one more time. His expression was complicated. Fear, embarrassment, maybe something that looked almost like respect. He didn't say anything, just turned and walked out with the officer's hand on his elbow. Nash watched them go, then turned back to Cole. "You want to press charges?" Cole shook his head. "You want a report filed?" Another shake. "You sure we've got witnesses?" "We probably got video." Nash glanced at the college kid in the corner who still had his phone out. "We could make a case if you wanted." "I'm sure. I just want to go home." Nash studied him for a long moment, then pulled a card from his pocket and held it out. "If he comes back around, you call me." Cole took the card and slipped it into his back pocket without looking at it. Nash reached out and offered his hand. Cole shook it. The grip was firm mutual respect between two men who'd both seen things they didn't talk about. "Thank you for your service." Nash said it quietly, meant for Cole alone, then louder to the room. "Anyone who recorded video of this incident, I need you to delete it right now. This is not entertainment. This is not content. Someone could have been seriously hurt." The college kid looked down at his phone. He tapped the screen a few times and held it up to show Nash. The video was gone. A few other people around the cafe did the same, deleting, confirming. Nash nodded his appreciation. He looked at Cole one more time, tipped his head slightly in acknowledgement, and walked out. The door closed behind him. The lights from the cruisers faded as they pulled away. The cafe exhaled. Conversation started again quietly at first, then louder. People returned to their coffee, their laptops, their Saturday mornings. But the atmosphere had changed. There was a different quality to the air now. A lesson that no one had asked for, but everyone had received. Amy came over with a towel and handed it to Cole without saying anything. He took it, wiped the coffee off his jeans where Ethan had knocked against the table earlier, and dropped the towel on his booth. His mug was still there, coffee gone cold. He looked at his watch. 9:47. He had time before he needed to pick up Maya, but he didn't want to stay here anymore, didn't want to be looked at, didn't want questions. He walked to the counter. Amy was back behind it now, her hand steadier than before. "How much for the coffee?" She shook her head. "It's on the house. I'd rather pay." She looked at him. Really looked, then nodded, understanding that he needed this to feel normal. $3.50. Cole pulled out his wallet, gave her a $5, told her to keep the change. She smiled, small but genuine. "Thank you for not making it worse." Cole didn't respond, just nodded and turned toward the door. The old man in the flannel shirt caught his eye as he passed. He raised his coffee cup slightly. A salute, a gesture of respect from one man to another. Cole returned the nod and kept walking. Outside the air was crisp and clean. Early spring in New Hampshire, the sun bright but not warm yet. He walked to his truck, climbed in, sat behind the wheel for a moment looking at the cafe through the windshield. People were still inside, still drinking coffee, still living their lives. The moment had passed. Ethan was gone. The police were gone. Everything was returning to normal. Except it wasn't really normal. Not anymore. Because Nash had pulled him aside on the way out, voice-low words, careful. Ethan Drake walked into the station 3 days ago and asked if you still lived in town. By name, address, everything. I thought you should know. And then Nash had added, quieter still. He just got out of county 2 weeks ago. Assault with a deadly weapon. 5 years served. And before you ask, no, I don't think this was random. Whatever history you two have, it's not finished. Cole started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind was already running scenarios, threat assessments, contingency plans. The things you never stopped doing once you'd been trained to think that way. Ethan Drake, Vincent's younger brother, the one who'd shown up drunk at Vincent's funeral and screamed at Cole in front of 200 people, calling him a murderer, a coward, a traitor who'd left good men to die. Security had removed him before he could throw the punch he was winding up for, and that had been the last time Cole had seen him. 9 years ago. And now he was out of prison asking about Cole showing up at his cafe starting fights. This wasn't over. Nash was right about that. Cole drove through the quiet streets toward the soccer complex, past the hardware store where he bought wood and screws for his projects, past the elementary school where Maya had learned to read, past the cemetery where Sarah was buried under a simple granite headstone. He didn't stop at the cemetery today. Sometimes he did, sitting there for hours talking to a woman who could no longer answer. But not today. Today he needed to pick up his daughter and take her home and pretend that everything was fine, that the past wasn't catching up, that old ghosts stayed buried. The soccer complex was chaos when he arrived. Games ending, new games starting, parents everywhere with folding chairs and coolers. He spotted Maya on the sideline talking to Zoe Chen, her best friend since 2nd grade. She saw his truck and waved that big enthusiastic wave she hadn't yet learned to be embarrassed by. He waved back and she said something to Zoe, grabbed her bag and jogged over. She climbed in, slightly out of breath, face flushed from running. How did it go? We won 3-2. I got an assist. That's my girl. She grinned, pulling her seatbelt across. Can we get pizza for lunch? We have leftovers at home. Pizza is better. Pizza is expensive. You're such a dad. That's literally my job. She laughed and pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages from her team group chat. Cole pulled out of the parking lot and headed home, and for a few minutes it felt normal. Just a father and daughter on a Saturday morning talking about nothing important, the world small and safe and manageable. But his phone buzzed in the cup holder. When he glanced down at a red light, he saw a text from a number he didn't recognize. Enjoyed our talk this morning. We should do it again sometime. Eid. Cole deleted it without responding and set the phone back down. Maya looked up from her screen. Everything okay? Everything's fine. She studied him with the kind of perception that 12-year-olds shouldn't have but often did. You're lying. I'm handling something. You don't need to worry. That's what you said last month when the furnace broke. And did you need to worry? No, but... Then trust me. She fell silent, but she was still watching him, reading the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set. She was too smart for her own good sometimes, too observant, too much like her mother. They drove the rest of the way in silence. When they got home, Cole made her a sandwich she didn't ask for and watched her eat it while pretending to read the news on his phone. But he wasn't reading. He was thinking about Ethan, about Vincent, about choices made under fire and consequences that outlasted discharge papers. His phone buzzed again, another text from the same number. Nice kid. Soccer right, picks up at 3:15 on weekdays. Cole's hand tightened around the phone hard enough that the case creaked. Maya looked up. Dad. He forced his expression neutral. Nothing. Just work. But it wasn't nothing, and Maya knew it. And somewhere across town, Ethan Drake was making it very clear that this was only beginning. Cole sat in his truck outside the house for 10 minutes after they got home, watching Maya disappear inside through the rearview mirror. The text burned in his pocket like a live coal. He pulled it out and read it again, the words no less threatening the third time through. Nice kid. Soccer right. Picks up at 3:15 on weekdays. Ethan knew where Maya went to school, knew her schedule, had probably been watching for days, cataloging routines, identifying vulnerabilities. It was exactly what Cole would do if he were running surveillance on a target, which meant Ethan had training, discipline, patience, all the things that made a threat credible instead of just noise. He got out of the truck and walked the perimeter of the property before going inside. Checked the fence line, the gate latch, the sight lines from the street. The house sat on a quarter-acre with neighbors close enough to hear shouting, but not close enough to see into the backyard. Windows faced south and west, curtains that needed replacing. Too much glass, too many angles. Inside, Maya was already upstairs, music leaking from under her door. Cole stood in the kitchen and called Nash. 3 rings, then a voice rougher than it had been at the cafe. "Lieutenant Nash, it's Cole Merrick. Ethan sent me a text 20 minutes ago, mentioned my daughter by name, her school, her schedule." Silence on the other end, the kind that meant Nash was thinking, calculating, deciding how seriously to take this. "You still have the message?" "Yes. Forward it to me. I'll run his number. See if it's registered or a burner. Either way, this is escalation. Harassment at minimum, possibly stalking, depending on how much contact he initiates. What can you actually do about it?" Nash exhaled, and Cole heard the frustration in it. Not much until he does something actionable. Sending a text isn't a crime. Mentioning your daughter isn't a threat unless he explicitly threatens harm. Best I can do is increase patrols in your area, maybe have a conversation with him about staying clear. That'll just piss him off. Probably. But it puts him on notice that we're watching. Sometimes that's enough. Cole doubted it. Men like Ethan didn't respond to warnings. They responded to consequences, and consequences required action. And action was exactly what Ethan wanted. An excuse, a justification, proof that Cole was the aggressor, that whatever came next was self-defense. I need to know what he did 5 years for. The assault charge. Nash was quiet for a beat too long. "You don't want to know. Tell me anyway." Another pause, then Nash spoke slowly, choosing words with care. "Bar fight. Started over a woman, ended with Ethan putting a broken bottle through a guy's shoulder. Severed an artery. Victim almost bled out on the floor. Ethan claimed self-defense, said the guy swung first, but 3 witnesses said otherwise. Jury convicted on assault with a deadly weapon. Judge gave him 7 years, served 5 for good behavior. Cole processed that. Severed artery. That wasn't bar fight violence, that was deliberate, targeted. The kind of injury you inflicted when you wanted someone to bleed, to suffer, to carry a reminder for the rest of their life. He have any other priors? Disorderly conduct when he was 23. Public intoxication twice. Domestic disturbance call from an ex-girlfriend 8 years ago, but she wouldn't press charges. Guy's got a pattern, but nothing that stuck until the bottle incident. What about military service? Marines. Served 6 years, got out with a general discharge. Files sealed, but general usually means something happened that wasn't bad enough for dishonorable, but wasn't good enough for honorable. My guess? Disciplinary issues, insubordination, maybe substance abuse? Cole thanked him and ended the call. He stood in the kitchen and stared at the refrigerator covered in Maya's drawings from elementary school, fading now, held up by magnets shaped like fruit. She'd drawn a family once, stick figures holding hands. Mom, Dad, Maya, and a dog they'd never actually owned. Sarah had kept that one on the fridge until the day she died, and Cole hadn't been able to take it down after. His phone buzzed. Another text from Ethan. No response. That's rude. I thought SEALs had better manners. Cole turned the phone off and set it on the counter. Engaging was what Ethan wanted. Reaction meant leverage, and leverage meant control. Better to go silent, force Ethan to escalate on his own timeline instead of being pulled into a rhythm someone else was setting. Upstairs, Maya's music stopped. He heard her door open, footsteps in the hall, then her voice from the landing. "Dad, you okay down there?" "Fine, just checking messages." She appeared at the top of the stairs, still in her soccer clothes, ponytail coming loose. "You've been standing there for like 5 minutes. Thinking. About what? About how to keep you safe without scaring you. About whether to send you away until this blows over." About whether anything ever really blows over or if it just goes underground and waits. The thought stayed locked behind his teeth. What came out instead was simpler. About what to make for dinner. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Liar. You never think that hard about food. We always end up with pasta or chicken. Pasta it is, then. Can I invite Zoe over? Not tonight. The smile faded. Why not? Because I said so. That's not a reason. It's the only one you're getting. She stared at him, and he watched her, trying to decide whether to push, whether this was worth a fight. She must have seen something in his face that made her recalculate, because she just shrugged and went back to her room. Cole made pasta because it was easy and required no thought. Boiled water dumped in noodles, heated sauce from a jar. Maya came down when he called her, ate in silence, and went back upstairs without asking to be excused. The house felt too quiet after she left, too big, every creak and settling sound amplified. He washed dishes and checked the locks on every window, tested the deadbolt on the front and back doors, made sure the motion sensor light in the driveway was working. Then he went to the garage and pulled down the lockbox from the shelf above the workbench. The combination spun smooth under his fingers. August 22nd, 2018, Sarah's birthday. Inside, wrapped in an oilcloth, was the Sig Sauer P226 he'd carried overseas. He hadn't touched it in 6 years, not since he'd cleaned it one last time before putting it away. The weight was familiar in his hand, balanced and solid, and just holding it brought back muscle memory he'd spent years trying to forget. He checked the chamber. Empty. Then the magazine. 15 rounds, brass casings, clean and uncorroded. He field-stripped it on the workbench, inspecting each component, running a cloth over the barrel and slide. Everything was in order. He reassembled it, loaded the magazine, chambered around, and set the safety. Then he stood there holding it, feeling the weight, wondering what the hell he was doing. This wasn't Iraq. This wasn't a firefight. This was New Hampshire, his home, his daughter upstairs doing homework or texting friends or whatever. 12-year-olds did on Saturday nights. Having a gun didn't make him safer. It made him dangerous, and dangerous was exactly what Ethan wanted him to be. He unloaded the weapon, put it back in the lockbox, spun the combination, and returned it to the shelf. If things got bad enough that he needed a gun, things had already gone too far. Sunday passed without incident. No texts, no calls, no sign of Ethan. Cole took Maya to the hardware store and let her pick out paint samples for her room, which she'd been asking to repaint for months. She chose a blue that reminded him of the ocean off the coast of Virginia back when they'd vacationed there before Sarah got sick. They spent the afternoon taping off trim and rolling primer, working in comfortable silence broken only by music from Maya's phone. By evening, the first coat was drying and Maya was sprawled on the couch, half asleep in front of some movie Cole wasn't following. He sat in the chair by the window, watching the street, waiting for headlights that never came. Nora appeared at the back door. "Dad, Zoe wants to know if I can sleep over next weekend." Her name was Maya, not Nora, and the slip caught him like a hook in the chest. Sarah used to make the same mistake when she was tired, calling their daughter by the name they'd almost chosen instead. He'd done it now too, his mind wandering to places it shouldn't go. "Yeah, that's fine. Really. You're not going to make it weird. I'm going to try not to." She grinned and disappeared back inside. Cole stayed in the yard a moment longer, feeling spring warmth on his face, listening to his daughter's laughter drift through open windows. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of weather that made spring feel like a broken promise. Cole drove Maya to school and watched her disappear into the building, scanning the parking lot for Ethan's truck. Nothing. He waited until the bell rang and the lot emptied before driving away. At home he tried to work, had a commission for a dining table that needed finishing, but his hands felt clumsy and his measurements kept coming out wrong. He finally gave up and went for a run, pushing hard enough that his lungs burned and his legs turned to rubber. Physical exhaustion didn't quiet his mind, but it made the noise more manageable. His phone rang while he was stretching on the front porch. Unknown number. He answered without speaking. Silence on the other end. Just breathing. Then Ethan's voice, low and amused. "Ignoring my texts." "That hurts, Cole. I thought we were reconnecting." Cole hung up and blocked the number. 30 seconds later, another call from a different number. He didn't answer. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. 10 minutes later, another call. Then another. 6 different numbers in an hour, none of them leaving messages. At 2:30, Cole drove to Maya's school and parked across from the main entrance. He was 45 minutes early, but he wasn't taking chances. Other parents started arriving around 3 minivans and SUVs forming a line along the curb. Cole stayed where he was watching. At 3:12, Ethan's truck rolled past. Slow cruise windows down, Ethan behind the wheel with that same smirk. He saw Cole and raised one hand in a lazy wave, then kept driving, disappeared around the corner and didn't come back. The bell rang. Kids poured out. Maya emerged with Zoe laughing about something completely unaware. She spotted the truck and waved, said goodbye to Zoe, jogged over. She climbed in and started talking immediately, something about a science project and a partner who wasn't pulling their weight. Cole listened with half his attention, the rest focused on the rearview mirror waiting for Ethan to reappear. They made it home without incident. Nora went upstairs to start homework. Maya. Her name was Maya. Cole stood at the kitchen window and waited. 20 minutes later, his phone rang. Nash. Got a call from Claire Hartley. Someone vandalized her wheelchair ramp last night, broke 3 of the support brackets. She's stuck on the 2nd floor until her landlord can fix it. Cole's jaw tightened. When did it happen? Sometime between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. No witnesses, no cameras on that side of the building. But Cole, here's the thing. She mentioned you. Said you helped her at the cafe. Wanted to know if this might be connected. It is. You sure Ethan's making a point? He can't get to me directly, so he's going after anyone I showed interest in protecting. Nash was quiet for a moment. That's a reach. Is it? He texted me about Maya's schedule shows up at her school and now Claire's ramp gets destroyed the same weekend I intervened on her behalf. That's not coincidence. Maybe not. But proving it's a different story. Without evidence linking him to the vandalism, my hands are tied. Cole closed his eyes and counted to 5. What about harassment? The phone calls. Different numbers each time, right? Probably burners. Even if we track them, he'll just say he lost his phone, someone must have found it. Unless he makes an explicit threat, we can't touch him. So I'm supposed to just wait until he does something actionable. I didn't say that. I'm saying legally my options are limited. Off the record, you might want to consider sending Maya somewhere safe for a few days. Let this cool down. Cole thanked him and hung up. He stood at the window until the light faded and Maya called down asking what was for dinner, and he realized he had no idea. Tuesday morning he drove to Claire's apartment. She lived in a converted house on the east side 2nd floor exactly like Nash had said. The ramp leading to her door hung at an angle, support brackets snapped clean through, fresh damaged splinters still pale where the wood had fractured. He knocked, heard movement inside, then Claire's voice through the door. Who is it, Cole Merrick? From the cafe. A pause, then locks turning. The door opened and Claire sat in the doorway, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked exhausted. I heard about the ramp, thought I could fix it. She studied him, weighing something. You think this was your friend from Saturday? He's not my friend. But yes. Why? Because I got between him and you, and he's the kind of person who takes that personally. She processed that, then wheeled back and gestured him inside. The apartment was small but organized. Everything at wheelchair height modifications that spoke to years of adaptation. Her laptop sat on the kitchen table surrounded by scattered papers and coffee cups. I called the police. They said without proof there's nothing they can do. They told me the same thing. So what? We just wait for him to escalate. Cole looked at the laptop at the work she'd been doing. Design schematics, architectural drawings, notes and margins. What are you working on? She glanced at the table, hesitant. Community playground. Accessible design. I'm submitting it for a grant. That's good work. It's necessary work. There aren't enough spaces where kids like me, if I'd been hurt as a child, could play without barriers. Cole nodded slowly. Ethan had chosen his target well. Not just someone Cole had defended, but someone who represented something worth defending. Proof that protecting the vulnerable was weakness, that caring made you a target. He spent the next 3 hours rebuilding the ramp, Bought new brackets from the hardware store, reinforced the supports, tested every board. Claire watched from the doorway, asking questions about lumber and load-bearing and whether this would hold if someone tried to break it again. Cole showed her the bolts he'd used. Industrial grade, the kind that required power tools to remove. When he finished, she wheeled down the ramp and back up, testing the stability. It didn't flex, didn't creak. Solid. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This might just make him angrier. You think he'll come back? I think he's just getting started. She looked at him with an expression he'd seen before in villages overseas on the faces of civilians caught between forces they couldn't control and didn't understand. The look of someone trying to decide whether hope was worth the risk. Why are you helping me? You don't know me, because he's using you to get to me. That makes you collateral damage, and I've seen enough of that for one lifetime. He gave her his number and told her to call if anything else happened, then drove home. Found Maya in the kitchen making a sandwich, and for a moment everything felt normal again. Then his phone buzzed. Text from yet another unknown number. Nice carpentry work. You always did have good hands. Too bad you couldn't save Vincent with them. Cole deleted it without responding, but the damage was done. Ethan was watching. Had probably been parked down the street the whole time Cole was at Claire's apartment, documenting, cataloging, adding ammunition for whatever endgame he was building toward. Wednesday brought rain, heavy and cold, the kind that turned dirt to mud and made driving treacherous. Cole took Maya to school through downpour that reduced visibility to 20 feet. Walked her to the door instead of dropping her at the curb, ignoring her protests that she wasn't a baby. Back home, he found an envelope wedged in the doorframe. No stamp, no address, just his name in block letters across the front. Inside was a single photograph. Maya and Zoe outside the school, taken from across the street. Yesterday afternoon, based on what Maya was wearing. The angle suggested it had been shot from inside a vehicle, probably with a telephoto lens. Maya's face was circled in red marker, and across the bottom in the same block letters, "Pretty girl." Shame if something happened. Cole's vision tunneled. The photograph crumpled in his fist before he consciously decided to move. He forced himself to breathe, to think, to not get in his truck and hunt Ethan down like the threat he was. He called Nash, got voicemail, left a message that came out tighter than he intended. Ethan left a photo of my daughter in my door. Explicit threat. I need you to pick him up. Now. 20 minutes later, Nash called back. I sent officers to his last known address. He's not there. Landlord says he moved out 2 weeks ago, didn't leave a forwarding. We're looking, but Cole, he could be anywhere. Then find him. We're trying. In the meantime, I need you to stay calm. Don't engage. Don't go looking for him. He's threatening my daughter. I know. And if you go after him, he'll claim self-defense, and you'll be the one in cuffs. Let us handle this. Cole hung up and stared at the photograph. Ethan had been outside his house, had stood close enough to slip an envelope in the door. Could have done anything. Could have been there when Cole was at Claire's apartment when Maya was home alone. The thought made his hands shake. He called the school, spoke to Principal Warren, a woman who'd been patient with Maya's adjustment after Sarah died. Explained the situation without giving details, asked if they could keep Maya inside during recess, not let her leave with anyone but him. Warren agreed, immediately promised to alert staff, suggested he might want to file a restraining order. Cole thanked her and hung up, knowing a restraining order was just paper. Paper didn't stop bullets, didn't stop men who'd already decided consequences didn't matter. He spent the afternoon checking sight lines around the house, identifying weaknesses, planning fields of fire if it came to that. The tactical assessment felt both necessary and insane, like he was preparing for combat in a residential neighborhood where the biggest threat should have been property taxes and HOA violations. At 2:45, he drove to the school early, parked in the same spot, eyes on every vehicle that approached. Parents arrived, kids loaded into cars, and Maya emerged right on schedule. She saw the truck and headed over, but halfway across the parking lot she stopped. Cole followed her gaze. Ethan stood at the fence line 50 yards away, just watching. He wasn't doing anything illegal. Wasn't on school property, just standing on a public sidewalk, hands in pockets, that same smirk, visible even at distance. Maya's face had gone pale. She looked at Cole, then back at Ethan, and Cole saw the moment she understood that whatever was happening wasn't random, wasn't coincidence, was about her. He got out of the truck and walked toward her, keeping his body between Maya and Ethan, put a hand on her shoulder, and guided her back to the vehicle. She climbed in without speaking, and Cole pulled out of the lot, watching Ethan recede in the rearview mirror. Maya's voice was small. Who was that man? Cole's hands tightened on the wheel. The truth would scare her. A lie would make it worse when she found out. Someone I used to know. He's angry about something that happened a long time ago. What happened? His brother died. He blames me. She absorbed that, staring out the window. Did you kill his brother? No. But I was there when it happened. I was in charge. When you're in charge, everything that happens is your responsibility. That's not fair. Fairness doesn't matter. Responsibility does. They drove in silence until they were almost home. Then Maya, barely audible. Is he going to hurt us? Cole wanted to say no, wanted to promise her safety, certainty, the kind of protection fathers were supposed to provide. But Sarah had taught him not to lie to their daughter, not about the things that mattered. I'm not going to let that happen. It wasn't the same as no, and Maya was smart enough to hear the difference. At home, he made her stay in the living room while he checked every closet, every window, the basement and garage. Satisfied the house was clear, he locked the doors and pulled the curtains. Maya sat on the couch watching him. We're prisoners now. We're careful now. For how long? Until this is over. When will that be? Cole didn't have an answer. That night he called Rebecca, Sarah's sister. She lived 2 hours north, had a farm with horses and space and distance from whatever was happening here. He explained the situation in broad strokes, asked if Maya could stay with her for a few days. Rebecca agreed without hesitation. Bring her up tomorrow. She can help with the horses, get some air, clear her head. Cole thanked her and went upstairs to Maya's room. Found her packing a bag before he'd even asked. How'd you know? She didn't look up. Because you've been thinking about it since we got home. I can tell. I need you somewhere safe while I handle this. I don't want to leave. I know. This isn't fair. I know that too. She zipped the bag and turned to face him, and he saw Sarah in her expression. The same determination, the same refusal to accept things she couldn't change. Promise me you'll be okay. I promise. You're lying again. I'm being realistic. There's a difference. She hugged him, sudden and fierce, and he held her like she might disappear if he let go. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. Don't do anything stupid. I'll do my best. Thursday morning they loaded her bag into the truck and drove north through fog so thick the road disappeared 10 feet ahead. Maya slept most of the way, or pretended to, and Cole let her have the fiction. Rebecca met them at the door with hugs and coffee and the kind of easy warmth that came from never having to wonder if someone was watching from the tree line. Cole stayed for lunch, helped Maya settle into the guest room, then made himself leave before he talked himself into staying. The drive home felt longer than the drive up, and the house was too quiet when he walked through the door. His phone rang before he'd gotten his jacket off. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. Ethan's voice, cheerful and mocking. Dropped off your daughter. Smart move. Wouldn't want her caught in the crossfire. Leave her out of this. She's already in it. You made sure of that when you left my brother to die. Vincent volunteered for rear guard. He knew the risks. You had a choice. Extract the team or go back for him. You chose wrong. I chose 8 lives over 1. That's not wrong. That's math. That's murder. Cole closed his eyes. This argument had played in his head 10,000 times over 9 years. Every version ended the same way, with Vincent dead and Cole carrying the weight. What do you want, Ethan? I want you to suffer. I want you to lose everything the way I did. Brother, career, family. And when you've got nothing left, when you're hollowed out and broken, then maybe you'll understand what you took from me. I didn't take anything from you. You threw it away yourself. Because I had nothing to live for. Vincent was all I had. And you killed him. The line went dead. Cole stood in the empty house and felt the walls closing in. Ethan wasn't interested in conversation, wasn't interested in truth or justice or anything rational. He wanted revenge, and revenge didn't follow rules, didn't respond to logic, didn't care about collateral damage. The only way to stop him was to remove the threat entirely. And removing the threat meant becoming exactly what Ethan wanted him to be. Friday morning, Cole drove to Claire's apartment. Found her struggling to get groceries up the ramp, bags balanced awkwardly on her lap while she wheeled one-handed. He helped without asking permission, carried everything inside, helped her unpack. She made coffee and they sat at her kitchen table, not talking, just existing in the same space. After a while, she broke the silence. He came by last night. Cole's head snapped up. Ethan. Didn't give his name, just knocked on my door around 10, asked if I was the girl from the cafe. I didn't answer, but he knew I was here. Stood outside talking through the door for 5 minutes. Said you'd caused a lot of trouble. Said people who helped you tended to regret it. Did you call the police? They came, took a statement, said the same thing as before. Without proof of intent, they can't do anything. Cole's hands curled into fists. I'm sorry. This is because of me. Her voice was sharp. Don't apologize for defending someone. He's the problem, not you. I made you a target. He made me a target. You just happened to notice. They sat in silence until the coffee went cold. Then Claire wheeled to the window and looked out at the street below, voice quiet but steady. My accident wasn't an accident. Not entirely. I was on a construction site inspecting work for a client. Someone had loosened the railing on the scaffold. I fell 20 feet onto concrete, broke my spine in 3 places. Cole waited, letting her set the pace. They investigated. Found evidence of sabotage. Couldn't prove who. My partner at the firm benefited most. Got my clients, my projects moved into my office before I was out of the hospital. But the lawyers said circumstantial evidence wasn't enough. You think he did it? I know he did. But knowing and proving are different things. And I was too broken to fight. Spent 2 years in physical therapy learning to live like this. By the time I had energy for anything else, he'd moved to California and the case was cold. She turned from the window. I'm telling you this because I understand. Sometimes the world hands you something unfair, and no amount of being right makes it different. You can spend your life fighting it, or you can adapt and keep moving. But you don't get to do both. Which did you choose? I'm still deciding. Cole stood to leave. At the door, she called after him. Whatever you're planning, don't let him turn you into something you're not. He drove home thinking about that, about the line between protecting and becoming, about whether there was a version of this where everyone walked away whole. His phone rang. Nash found Ethan. Or rather, he found us. Walked into the station an hour ago, filed a harassment complaint against you, says you've been stalking him, threatening him, won't leave him alone. Cole's laugh was bitter. That's insane. I know. But he's got a lawyer now and the lawyer's making noise about restraining orders and police harassment. I need you to stay away from him, Cole. Completely away. Don't respond to calls, don't engage, don't even look at him wrong. Why? Because if this goes legal, you need clean hands. Cole thanked him and hung up, understanding the game Ethan was playing. Create a paper trail. Establish himself as the victim. Make sure that when things finally escalated, the story was already written. Saturday morning came gray and heavy. Cole drove to the gym he never used anymore and worked the heavy bag until his knuckles bled through the wraps, pushed until his arms wouldn't lift, until the violence in his chest had somewhere to go that wasn't Ethan's face. In the locker room, checking his phone, he found 3 missed calls from an unknown number and 1 voicemail. Ethan's voice calm and reasonable. Meet me tonight, 8 p.m., the old warehouse on Porter Street. Just you and me. We finish this like men. No lawyers, no cops. You don't show, I go to your sister-in-law's farm tomorrow. Your choice. The message ended. Cole played it again, listening for background noise, anything that might indicate location or intent. Found nothing except the implicit threat that left him no choice at all. He called Nash, got voicemail, left a message explaining the situation. Then he drove home and unlocked the safe in the garage. The cig felt heavier than he remembered. The warehouse squatted at the edge of the industrial district, a relic from when manufacturing still meant something in New Hampshire. 3 stories of red brick and broken windows, surrounded by chain-link fence with gaps large enough to drive through. Cole arrived 40 minutes early and parked 3 blocks away, approaching on foot through shadows that pooled between streetlights. The building had been condemned for asbestos removal that never happened, left to rot, while developers argued over permits and zoning variances. Perfect place for a meeting nobody wanted witnesses to. Perfect place for things to go wrong. Cole circled the perimeter twice, cataloging exits and sightlines. North entrance, chained but corroded, would break with pressure. East side had a loading dock metal door hanging crooked on one hinge. South wall backed against woods, natural cover, but also concealment for ambush. West faced Porter Street, too exposed, too much light. He chose the loading dock and slipped inside. The interior smelled like mold and rust, decades of neglect compacted into air thick enough to chew. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting geometric shadows across concrete floors littered with debris. Industrial shelving lined the walls, empty except for pigeon nests and spray paint tags declaring territory in languages Cole didn't speak. He moved through the space, methodically clearing corners, checking for movement. Found evidence of homeless encampments in the northwest corner. Sleeping bags, empty bottles, a shopping cart filled with aluminum cans. Nobody present, probably scattered when they heard someone coming. The main floor opened into a central atrium where forklifts had once maneuvered pallets between loading zones. 3 stories of catwalks ringed the space, railings missing in sections, grated floors that would telegraph footsteps to anyone below. Tactical nightmare. Too many angles, too many positions of advantage. Cole positioned himself center floor, back to a support column that would stop most calibers. Gave him 360 awareness and forced anyone approaching to cross open ground. The SIG rode heavy in the small of his back, tucked under his jacket, round-chambered but safety engaged. Insurance he hoped he wouldn't need. 7:53 by his watch. 7 minutes early. He waited. At 7:59, footsteps echoed from the east entrance. Multiple sets, at least 3 people. Ethan appeared first, silhouetted against streetlight, bleeding through the doorway, flanked by the 2 men from the cafe. Marcus moved like a linebacker who'd taken too many hits, slow but powerful, dangerous if he got hands on you. Lewis compensated for size with twitchy energy hands, never still, eyes darting. Ethan walked forward until he stood 20 feet from Cole, close enough to talk, far enough to react. He wore the same leather jacket and carried himself with the false confidence of a man who'd stopped caring about consequences. Punctual. I appreciate that. Military discipline. Cole stayed silent. Not much for conversation tonight. That's fine. Let's keep this simple. Ethan gestured to his companions. Marcus and Lewis are here to make sure we both play fair. No guns, no knives, just you and me settling old business. There's no old business to settle. Vincent's death wasn't murder. It was war, your mission, your orders. He died following them. He died being a Marine. That's what Marines do. They hold the line so others can make it home. Ethan's face hardened. Don't lecture me about what Marines do. I was a Marine before they threw me out. Before everything fell apart because my brother was gone and nobody gave a damn except me. Vincent wouldn't have wanted this. You don't know what he would have wanted. You left him to die. The words landed like blows, and part of Cole felt them hit home because Ethan wasn't completely wrong. Vincent had volunteered for rear guard, yes, had insisted on staying when Cole ordered him to fall back. But Cole had accepted that sacrifice because the math made sense. 1 life weighed against 8. Utilitarian calculus that worked on paper but left ghosts in the dark hours when accounting didn't help. I think about Vincent every day, visit his grave every month. I don't forget what he did or what it cost. Ethan's laugh was broken glass. You visit his grave? That's supposed to mean something. That's supposed to make me forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to stop using his death as an excuse for this. This, Ethan spread his arms. This is justice. This is you finally understanding what you took from me. Movement on the catwalk above. Lewis circling to a better angle. Marcus shifted weight, telegraphing intent. Cole tracked both without moving his head, peripheral vision catching the setup even as Ethan kept talking. You know what I realized in prison? 5 years I had to think about it. Figure out what bothered me most. Wasn't that Vincent died? People die. That's war, like you said. What bothered me was that you got to walk away. Got to quit, go home, play dad, build your nice, quiet life while I fell apart. You didn't suffer. You didn't lose anything that mattered. I lost my wife to cancer, not because someone made a choice that killed her, not because someone decided her life mattered less than mission success. That's not what happened with Vincent. That's exactly what happened. You chose mission over man, and then you got to live with it, while my brother rotted in a grave 6,000 miles from home. Cole's fingers curled at his sides, forcing himself to stay calm. Ethan was baiting him, pushing buttons, trying to manufacture the confrontation that would justify whatever came next. The smart move was to walk away, refuse engagement, let Nash and the legal system handle it. But Ethan had shown up at Maya's school, sent photographs, made crystal clear that backing down wouldn't end anything. What do you want, Ethan? You want me to fight you. You want me to say you're right, that I'm a murderer. What happens after? Does Vincent come back? Do you get your life back, or does this just keep going until one of us is dead? I want you to hurt, really hurt, the way I hurt. I do hurt. I've carried Vincent's death for 9 years. It doesn't go away because I built a life around it. Not enough. You still have a daughter, still have a future. I want you to know what it feels like to lose that. The temperature in the warehouse dropped 20 degrees. Cole's voice went flat, emptied of everything except the promise underneath. If you touch my daughter, there's no place you can hide. No prison sentence long enough. No amount of time that makes you safe. Do you understand me? Ethan's smile sharpened. There it is. The real Cole Merrick. The one who puts bullets in people when they threaten what's his. I was starting to think you'd gone soft. I went sane. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, you look the same as you did overseas. Same cold calculation, same willingness to kill if the situation requires it. You just dress it up nicer now. Cole couldn't argue because Ethan was right. The instincts never went away. The training never faded. He could assess threat and neutralize it faster than conscious thought. And part of him, the part that had kept him alive through 16 years of operations, wanted to end this right now. Wanted to cross the 20 feet between them and make sure Ethan never threatened anyone again. But that part of him was exactly what got Vincent killed. The cold math that said one death was acceptable if it saved others. The logic that turned people into variables in an equation where the answer was always written in blood. He'd walked away from that life specifically because he couldn't be both soldier and father, couldn't switch between the man who made those calculations and the man who braided his daughter's hair before school. I'm not here to fight you. Ethan's eyebrows rose. No. Then why come? Because you threatened Maya. And I need you to understand that whatever happened with Vincent, whatever you think I owe you, she's not part of it. Leave her alone and we can talk. Keep pushing, and this ends the only way it can. Is that a threat? It's a boundary, one you need to respect. Or what? You'll kill me like you killed my brother. I didn't kill Vincent. You let him die. Same thing. The argument was circular, infinite, impossible to win because they were arguing about different things. Ethan wasn't interested in truth. He was interested in pain and revenge and making someone pay for a loss that had broken him beyond repair. Cole tried a different approach. Vincent wrote you letters from overseas. Did you read them? Ethan's expression flickered. What his letters? He talked about you, worried about you. Told me once that you were the reason he'd enlisted, that he wanted to be someone you could be proud of. Don't. Ethan's voice cracked. Don't you dare talk about him like you knew him. I did know him, not as well as you, but enough to understand what kind of man he was. And I'm telling you, he wouldn't want this. Wouldn't want you destroying yourself over his death. You don't get to tell me what my brother would want. Then listen to what he actually said. He wrote you a letter the day before he died. Gave it to me, told me to make sure you got it if he didn't make it back. That stopped Ethan cold. You're lying. I'm not. It's in a safe deposit box in Virginia. First National Bank in Arlington. Box number 847 registered under my name. Letter inside addressed to Dalton Drake from his brother Vincent Drake, killed in action 9 years ago. Ethan never got it. Ethan stared at him, something vulnerable breaking through the rage. What does it say? I don't know. Never opened it. Wasn't addressed to me. Silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Then Ethan's face hardened again, walls slamming back into place. "Nice try. But I'm not falling for some manipulation. It's not manipulation. It's the truth. And you can have it whenever you want. All you have to do is stop this. Walk away. Let me get the letter, give it to you, and we never see each other again. And if I don't, then we finish this right here. One of us doesn't leave." Lewis whistled from the catwalk. "Boss, we doing this or what?" Ethan ignored him, eyes locked on Cole. "You really think Vincent's letter is going to fix this? Going to make me forget 9 years of blaming you?" "No. But it might help you remember who Vincent actually was instead of the version you've built in your head." Ethan's hand went to his jacket pocket, pulled out something small and metallic. Not a gun. A flask. He unscrewed the cap and drank long pull that made his throat work. When he lowered it, his eyes were wet. "I've been dying for 6 months. Liver failure. Too much of this." He shook the flask. "Doctors say I've got maybe 8 months if I'm lucky. 4 if I'm not." The revelation landed like a gut punch. Suddenly the recklessness made sense. The escalation. The willingness to burn everything down. Ethan wasn't planning for tomorrow because he didn't have many tomorrows left. "I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you relieved that the problem's solving itself? I'm sorry you're in pain. And I'm sorry Vincent's not here to help you through it. But using the time you have left to destroy other people isn't going to save you. Wasn't trying to save myself. Was trying to make sure you suffered before I go. Make sure someone paid for what I lost. Vincent already paid, and you're about to pay more than anyone should have to. Don't make this worse by dragging innocent people down with you." Ethan took another drink, wiped his mouth. "Your daughter's not innocent. She's leverage. Same way Vincent was leverage when they ambushed our position. They knew we wouldn't leave him. Knew we'd try to extract. Knew it would cost us." The comparison was obscene, and Cole felt rage building in his chest like pressure behind a dam. But showing it would be giving Ethan exactly what he wanted. Maya is 12 years old. She's never hurt anyone. Never made a choice that cost someone their life. Using her to get to me doesn't honor Vincent's memory. It just proves you've become something he'd be ashamed of. The words cut deeper than Cole intended. Ethan flinched like he'd been slapped, and for a moment the facade cracked completely. Cole saw the broken man underneath. Sick, grieving, terrified of dying alone with nothing but anger to show for his life. Then the mask returned harder than before. Maybe Vincent would be ashamed. But he's not here to judge me. You made sure of that. Lewis called down again. "Boss, seriously, we doing this?" Ethan looked up at him, then at Marcus positioned near the exit. "Yeah, we're doing this." He dropped the flask and pulled something else from his pocket. Not a weapon. A phone. He held it up so Cole could see the screen. Video feed grainy but clear enough. Claire's apartment. Interior shot showing her at the kitchen table working on her laptop, completely unaware she was being watched. "See, Cole? I learned something from you. About leverage. About making choices. Right now I've got someone outside her building. One call and he goes in. Does whatever I tell him to. And you get to live with that, the way I've lived with Vincent." Cole's world narrowed to the phone screen. "You put a camera in her apartment. Installed it when I vandalized the ramp. Easy when you know what you're doing. This is insane. This is justice. You took someone I loved. I take someone you care about. I barely know her. But you protected her. Rebuilt her ramp. That makes her matter. And that makes her useful." The calculation was coldly logical, psychotic but coherent. Ethan had studied Cole's patterns, identified weak points, created a scenario where any choice led to loss. Attack Ethan, and he makes the call. Bryn gets hurt. Walk away, and Ethan escalates anyway because dying men don't negotiate. Cole's hand moved toward the cig tucked in his waistband, instinct overriding thought. "Don't." Ethan's voice was calm. "I've got the call queued. Fingers on the button. You pull that gun and I push send before you clear leather. You're bluffing. You willing to bet her life on that?" Cole froze, hand hovering at his back. The warehouse had gone absolutely silent except for water dripping somewhere in the darkness. Lewis watched from above, grinning. Marcus had positioned himself to block the exit. This was the trap the endgame Ethan had been building toward. Force Cole into a choice where every option resulted in someone getting hurt. Then watch him carry the guilt. It was elegant in its cruelty, but Ethan had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed Cole came alone. Nash stepped out of the shadows near the loading dock, service weapon drawn and steady. "Ethan Drake, put the phone down, hands where I can see them." Ethan's spun phone still raised. "Stay back, I'll make the call." "No, you won't, because Officer Brennan is already at Claire Hartley's apartment, and the man you sent is in custody." Nash moved forward, deliberate and controlled. "It's over, Ethan. Put the phone down. You're lying. Check your texts. Your guy sent 3 messages asking for instructions. Know why he didn't call. Because we've got him and he's cooperating." Ethan looked at his phone, swiping through messages, and Cole watched the reality sink in. The trap had been compromised. The leverage gone. Everything he'd built toward crumbling in real time. "I had to tell Nash the plan." Cole's voice was quiet, almost apologetic. "Couldn't risk you actually hurting her. So I called him before I came. Set up the intercept. Your guy got picked up 20 minutes ago trying to break into Claire's building." Ethan's hand started to shake. "You ruined it. You ruined it. I stopped you from making it worse." "Worse? How could it be worse? I'm dying. My brother's dead. I've got nothing left except making you hurt." The anguish in his voice was real and raw and heartbreaking. This wasn't a villain monologue. This was a man whose entire identity had collapsed around a single loss, who'd spent 9 years blaming someone else because accepting responsibility meant accepting that Vincent's death had no meaning, no purpose, no cosmic justice to balance the scales. Nash took another step. "Ethan, I need you to put the phone down and get on the ground. We can sort this out, but I need you to comply right now." "Or what? You'll shoot me." "Do me a favor. Save me 6 months of dying by inches. Nobody's shooting anyone. Just put the phone down." Ethan looked at Cole, and something shifted in his expression. The rage drained away, replaced by exhaustion so profound it seemed to age him a decade in seconds. "Vincent wrote me a letter." Cole nodded. "The day before he died. Told me it was important, that I had to make sure you got it. What if it just says goodbye? What if there's nothing in it that fixes this? Then at least you'll know. At least you'll have his actual words instead of the ones you've been imagining." Ethan's arm lowered slowly, phone dropping to his side. His whole body seemed to deflate like someone had cut the strings holding him upright. "I don't want to die hating you." "Then don't. Choose something else. Choose to remember Vincent the way he was instead of the way he died." Nash was close now, within 10 feet. "Ethan, I'm going to need you to—" Everything happened in the span of a heartbeat. Lewis moved on the catwalk, pulling something from his jacket. Small, dark, unmistakably, a pistol. Nash pivoted, bringing his weapon up. Ethan saw the movement and lunged forward, not at Nash, but at Cole, shouting words that cut through the chaos. "He's got a gun." The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Lewis fired from above, rounds sparking off concrete 3 feet from Nash. Return fire came instantly, Nash's training overriding everything else. The bullet caught Lewis in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. He dropped the pistol and collapsed against the railing, clutching the wound. Marcus charged from the exit, massive and fast, despite his size. Nash turned toward him, but Ethan was between them, and in that moment of confusion, Cole moved. He intercepted Marcus with a low tackle, using the bigger man's momentum against him. They hit the concrete together, impact driving air from both sets of lungs. Marcus recovered first, throwing an elbow that caught Cole above the ear. Stars exploded across his vision. Training kicked in. Cole trapped Marcus's arm, rotated into position, applied pressure to the elbow joint. Marcus roared and tried to pull free, but the hold was locked, and forcing it meant dislocation. He went still, breathing hard, pinned. Nash had Ethan face down, knee in his back, cuffing him with practiced efficiency. "Stay down. Don't move. Don't speak." "I'm fine." Ethan's voice was muffled against concrete. More sirens outside. Backup arriving. Officer Brennan came through the loading dock with 2 uniforms, weapons drawn. She saw the scene and immediately moved to secure Lewis on the catwalk. He was moaning, blood spreading across his shirt. Nash looked at Cole, still controlling Marcus. "You good?" "Yeah." "Peachy. Let him up. Slow." Cole released Marcus and backed away, hands visible. Marcus rolled to his knees, then stood with a uniform on each side. No fight left in him, just shock that everything had gone sideways. Brennan called down from the catwalk. "Shoulder wound, through and through. He'll live but needs an ambulance." Nash nodded and spoke into his radio requesting medical. Then he hauled Ethan to his feet and turned him around. Ethan's face was blank, all the anger burned out, leaving only hollowness behind. Vincent would have hated this, would have hated what I became. Cole stood a few feet away, breathing hard, tasting copper where he'd bitten his cheek during the tackle. "He would have wanted you to live. Really live. Not just survive until your body gave out. Too late for that. Maybe. But it's not too late to choose how you spend the time you've got." Nash guided Ethan toward the exit, reading him his rights in a tone that managed to be both professional and gentle. Brennan escorted Marcus out behind them. Lewis was being carried down on a stretcher. As they passed, he looked at Cole, weak but lucid. "Vincent saved my life. 10 years ago. Different mission. I owed him. That's why I was with Ethan. To protect him." He paused, wincing. "But Vincent wouldn't have wanted this." "I'm sorry." Cole nodded, understanding the weight of debts that outlasted the people who'd earned them. The warehouse emptied quickly, leaving Cole alone in the space where everything had almost gone completely wrong. He stood there for a long moment, listening to his heartbeat slow, feeling the adrenaline drain away. The cig was still tucked in his waistband, unfired, a weapon he'd prepared to use but hadn't needed. That felt significant somehow, though he couldn't articulate why. Outside, ambulances and police cars had turned Porter Street into a carnival of flashing lights. EMTs worked on Lewis while Nash supervised booking. Brennan approached Cole with a blanket because apparently he was shaking and hadn't noticed. "You okay?" "Define okay." She smiled. "Alive, unshot, not in handcuffs. By tonight's standards, that's pretty good." He accepted the blanket and wrapped it around his shoulders, suddenly aware of how cold the night had gotten. Spring in New Hampshire was like that. Warm during the day, winter returning after dark to remind you it wasn't gone. Just resting. Nash finished with Ethan and walked over. "Need you to come to the station, give a statement. Whole thing's going to be a mess of paperwork. What happens to him? Conspiracy to commit assault, attempted kidnapping, bunch of other charges that'll stack up. Plus the gun charges from Lewis. With his priors and the evidence we've got, he's looking at serious time. More than his liver is going to give him, probably. He's dying. 6 months at most." Nash absorbed that without expression. Makes sense. Explains the recklessness. Doesn't excuse it, but explains it. "Can you do me a favor?" "Depends on the favor." "There's a letter. Safe deposit box in Virginia. First National Bank in Arlington. Box number 847 registered under my name. Letter inside addressed to Ethan from his brother Vincent Drake, killed in action 9 years ago. Ethan never got it." Nash pulled out his notebook. "You want me to retrieve it? I want you to make sure he gets it before he dies. Even if he's in prison. Even if he doesn't want to see me. That letter's the only thing Vincent left him. He deserves to have it." Nash wrote down the details, then looked up. "You're a better man than most, Merrick. I'm just trying to live with the choices I made. This is part of that." The statement took 3 hours at the station, going through every detail from the cafe incident to tonight's confrontation. Cole told it straight, didn't minimize or exaggerate, let the facts speak for themselves. Nash listened, took notes, asked clarifying questions that showed he'd done this enough times to know what prosecutors would need. When they finished, it was past midnight. Nash walked Cole to his truck and leaned against the driver's side door before Cole could open it. "Off the record, you handled tonight exactly right. Could have gone a dozen different ways, most of them bad. You kept your head, trusted me to do my job, didn't let it escalate further than it had to. Felt like barely controlled chaos. That's what it always feels like from inside. From outside, looked like a man who understood violence well enough to avoid it." Cole thought about that during the drive home. About the difference between capability and action. Between being able to hurt someone and choosing not to. He'd spent 16 years becoming someone dangerous, and the last 6 trying to become someone safe. Tonight had tested whether both could exist in the same person. The house was dark when he pulled into the driveway. He sat in the truck for a while, too exhausted to move, watching the stars through the windshield. Maya was safe at Rebecca's farm, 2 hours north, probably asleep with the guest room window open so she could hear horses moving in the paddock. His phone buzzed. Text from Nash. Spoke to Arlington PD. They'll retrieve the letter Monday. I'll make sure Ethan gets it. Cole typed back a simple response. Thank you. He climbed out and walked to the house, checking locks from habit before collapsing onto the couch. Sleep came fast and dreamless, his body finally convincing his mind to shut down. Morning arrived with pale light and bird noise. Cole woke stiff and sore, every joint protesting. He made coffee and called Rebecca. Cole, everything okay? It's handled. I'll pick up Maya this afternoon around 3. She'll be ready. Whatever happened, I'm glad you're all right. Cole spent the morning in the workshop, sanding the dining table he'd been finishing before all this started, preparing it for the final coat of polyurethane. The work was meditative, requiring enough focus to quiet his mind. At 2:30 he loaded the truck and drove north. The farm appeared just after 3. White fences, rolling pasture horses grazing in afternoon sun. Maya was in the paddock with Rebecca's mare brushing her coat. She saw the truck and waved, then jogged over. She climbed in and studied his face. Is it over? Yeah, it's over. The man who was watching you is in custody. Won't be bothering us anymore. She nodded slowly. Was he really mad about his brother? He was. But his anger wasn't really about me. It was about loss, not knowing how to handle it. I understood that too late to help him. That's sad. Very sad. They drove in comfortable silence until Maya spoke again. I was scared. Not just for me. For you. Cole's chest tightened. I'll always do everything in my power to come back. That's a promise I can keep. She accepted that with a small nod. They stopped for dinner at the diner Maya liked. She ordered pancakes because breakfast food tasted better at dinner, and they talked about Rebecca's horses, about school starting Monday, about whether she still wanted to repaint her room. I think I want to keep the stars and moons. She said it quietly. They feel right. Like Mom's still there somehow. Then we keep them. Back home, Maya went upstairs to unpack. Cole stood at the kitchen window watching evening settle over the neighborhood. His phone buzzed. Text from Claire. Police told me what happened. Are you all right? Cole responded immediately. Yes, you safe. Thank you for stopping him. Coffee this week Wednesday. Riverside Cafe, 9 a.m. See you there. That night after Maya was asleep, Cole stood in the backyard looking at stars. The same stars Vincent had seen from Iraq. The same stars Ethan was seeing from a county cell. The universe didn't care about their small human dramas, didn't assign meaning or justice. It just was. Infinite and indifferent. But if the universe didn't assign meaning, then people could choose what mattered, what had value, what was worth protecting. He chose his daughter, chose building things instead of breaking them, chose forgiveness over revenge. And that choice, repeated every day, was enough. Inside the house was warm. Maya's breathing drifted down from upstairs, steady and safe. Cole locked the doors and went to bed. Monday morning, Cole received a text from Nash. Letter delivered to Ethan this morning. Medical eval confirmed late-stage liver failure. His lawyers petitioning for compassionate release to hospice. Judge hearing it Friday. Cole saved the message. Didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Wednesday morning arrived bright and clear. Cole walked into Riverside Cafe at 8:40 and found his corner booth. Amy brought coffee without asking. Claire wheeled in at 9 on the dot. She looked lighter somehow, like a weight had lifted. Thanks for meeting me. Of course. She pulled out her laptop. I wanted to show you something. The playground design. I submitted it for the grant. Found out yesterday I won. She turned the screen toward him. Rendering of a playground with ramps instead of stairs, sensory panels at wheelchair height, swings with supportive harnesses. This is incredible. Construction starts this summer, right here in town. Kids who need spaces that include them instead of excluding them will finally have somewhere to go. Cole looked at the design and thought about Vincent's letter about Ethan choosing destruction, about how grief could either break you or reshape you into something new. When it's done, I'd like to help build it. I'm pretty good with wood. Claire smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. They talked until her coffee went cold. Easy conversation that required no walls. When she finally said she needed to get to work, Cole walked her to her car. Will I see you here again Saturday mornings? Every Saturday. It's tradition. Good. I'll be here too. That afternoon, Cole's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He opened it cautiously. A message from Ethan. I read Vincent's letter. He told me to forgive you. Said holding anger would poison me worse than any enemy could. Said you were a good man who made hard choices. He was proud to serve under your command. He asked me to take care of myself, to live for both of us. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I'm going to try. For him. Thank you for keeping it safe all these years. Ethan Cole read it 3 times, saved the message, didn't text back. The message wasn't asking for response. It was offering closure or the beginning of it. Saturday came. Cole took Maya to her soccer game. She scored a goal and he cheered loud enough to embarrass her. Afterward, they got burgers and talked about nothing important. At home, Maya went upstairs to do homework while Cole stood in the backyard watching clouds move across late afternoon sky. His phone was in his pocket, silent. No threats, no calls, no emergencies. Just an ordinary Saturday in an ordinary life that felt extraordinary, specifically because it was his. Maya appeared at the back door. Dad, Zoe wants to know if I can sleep over next weekend. Yeah, that's fine. Really. You're not going to make it weird. I'm going to try not to. She grinned and disappeared inside. Cole stayed in the yard a moment longer. Spring warmth on his face. Maya's laughter through open windows. Somewhere across town, Ethan was dying in a hospital bed reading Vincent's words for the 100th time. Somewhere in Virginia, Vincent's grave stood peaceful and still. Here in this moment, Cole was exactly where he needed to be. The world didn't owe him peace, didn't promise easy answers or clean resolutions, but it offered moments like this. Ordinary, quiet, perfect in their imperfection. He walked inside and closed the door behind him, choosing what came next, the same way he'd chosen what came before. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of being the father Maya needed and the man he decided to become. It was enough. It would always be enough.